week before he spoke to its president. The UK Supreme Court has ruled that Boris Johnson broke the law when he suspended Parliament. The court says lawmakers now need to return to decide what to do next. And China has made a concession on trade. Sources say Beijing is granting new waivers to some companies to buy US soybeans. For all the news you need to start your day, check out Daybreak on your mobile phone on the Bloomberg Anywhere app. Karen.
Hannah, thank you. S&P futures up 12 points this morning. Dow futures up 101 and NASDAQ futures up 36. 10-year Treasury up 6/30 seconds, yield 1.70%. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and John.
Karen, thanks so much. Bloomberg surveillance this morning, coast to coast and worldwide, brought to you by Invesco. Every day they bring together ideas with technology, data with inspiration, and investors with solutions. Invesco, greater possibilities together. Invesco.com/together. Invesco Distributors, Inc. John?
Tom Keane, thank you very much. You know how the UN General Assembly works. There is the main event, the general debate, and then all these little bilaterals on the sidelines. And sometimes it's really interesting to watch some of these bilaterals play out. Yesterday was no different. A really interesting conversation and exchange between the President of the United States and the Treasury Secretary, Stephen Mnuchin, explaining to the President why Chinese officials and their visit to the US farmland in Montana was delayed. Take a listen to what they had to say.
That was actually at our request. They delayed that. So we didn't want there to be any confusion. They have started buying agriculture. They're going to reschedule that at a different time. The timing didn't work. But that was purely at our request.
Why was that our request, just out of curiosity?
We didn't want confusion around the trade.
Yeah, but I want them to buy farm products.
There was no confusion. We want them to buy agriculture. They committed to buy agriculture, and they're doing it.
A humorous and maybe insightful exchange with the President of the United States and the Treasury Secretary, Stephen Mnuchin, over a visit to a farm in Montana that never happened and shaped some people's views about where we were in talks. I can tell you that talks about talks are leading to more talks. The Treasury Secretary later confirming with Fox News. Later confirming with Fox News that those talks would commence on the week October 7th in Washington with the Chinese Vice Premier. Marilyn Watson of BlackRock, please weigh in on this craziness. Where are we in all of this?
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge amount going on, obviously. I think the markets are really focusing still on the trade tensions and the talks that are going to be coming up in October. We have seen some concessions already from the Chinese in terms of, I say, buying more agriculture, in terms of pork, in terms of, soybean, etc. And I think, to your point, it's really interesting now, especially as we have the UN Council, to see all these side talks. So it's not only the trade tensions, but also any discussions around the tensions around Iran, Saudi Arabia, Brexit, you name it. I think it's all going on, and I think that's why we're seeing a bit more volatility that we are in the market. Obviously, we had the announcement in the UK this morning. We saw the spike in sterling. But I think really there are a whole range of different issues that are very politically driven, that are really sort of focusing the market on them at the moment.
A whole range of issues that could be addressed at the UN later today. Just as far as the trade story is concerned, we've had a series of growth scares through this cycle. We mentioned them many times: 2011, 2012, 15, 16, and now 18 coming into 2019. Do the trade talks hold the keys to how long we will be going through this growth scare, or can we come out of it because of something else somewhere else? Some kind of policy initiative that brings us out of this finally. How does this play out in your mind? What's your base case, Marilyn?
So I think that the trade tensions are really a core component of the global growth trajectory going forward. We've seen that in the export data coming out of Japan, out of Korea, in Europe. We're seeing the impact that it's having on the PMIs in the Eurozone and elsewhere. And I think it really is starting to play a key role in global growth.
Then at BlackRock, in fixed income, which spread narrows most advantageously for our listeners? If there's a permanence to this regime, as James Bullard would call it, where's the spread narrowing opportunity?
So at the moment in the US, we do like investment grade credit. We think in this environment where the Fed is gradually reducing rates, where it continues to support the growth of the economy, then we do continue to like spread product. We also like agency MBS, etc. I think in the Eurozone, we do see spreads tightening further in the long end of the curve in Italy and France. We think we can see further compression there. But I think also, so trade isn't the only thing, and we are seeing a ratcheting up of, I guess, a focus on whether we could see more fiscal stimulus in Europe, whether we can see more fiscal stimulus around the world, as well as, a range of loosening from central banks around the world as well. So we could potentially see more in Japan. We're seeing more in China, for example, in the Eurozone. So it's not just trade, but that is one of the key components that is having an impact on global growth.
I was just quickly taking a look at one of your trades and looking for that compression, that spread compression in Europe. In Italy right now, the spread over Germany on a 10-year maturity is 141, call it 142 basis points. The tights of the QE era are 88 basis points. And I just wonder, can we retest the tights of the QE era, the kind of levels we had back in early 2015? Is that what you're looking for, Marilyn?
Well, so we've already seen a huge compression between Italy and Germany. We've really seen that come down quite considerably. It's hard to see in the near term them getting back to the tights that you mentioned between Italy and Germany, because we do still see a lot of political risk in Italy still. They've moderated, but they haven't gone away. The Eurozone as a whole is still, struggling, and we've seen the very weak data coming out of Germany and elsewhere as well. So I think the ECB is doing everything it can. They've made it very clear that we need to see more fiscal stimulus. I think really to get back to the tights between Italy and Germany, you need to see a lot more in terms of structural reform in Italy, politics, etc.
Marilyn Watson.
Marilyn, thank you. It's good to see you.
Thank you.
Futures up 11, Dow futures up 93. A nice lift to the market, actually tangible. The VIX 14.43. Stay with us. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Stock futures are pointing to gains at the open on this Tuesday. Crude oil is down 1.25% and just under $58 a barrel. Today we're watching for reports on home prices and consumer confidence and earnings from Nike. Stocks were mainly little changed on Wall Street yesterday. The S&P 500 fell less than a point, but there is trade optimism this morning. Bloomberg has learned that the Chinese government has given new waivers to several companies to buy U.S. soybeans without being hit by retaliatory tariffs. Anheuser-Busch InBev has pulled off one of the year's biggest IPOs the second time around, raising about $5 billion by listing its Asian unit in Hong Kong 2 months after scrapping the original share sale. The sale gives the Asian unit an enterprise value of $45 billion, helping the parent company reduce its massive debt and laying the groundwork for possible future acquisitions. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com.
1 in 4 children believe potatoes grow on trees. 1 in 5 children believe fish fingers are made from chicken. And 1 in 8 adults believe the moon landings didn't happen. People believe all sorts of strange things. Some people believe that insurance companies try to avoid paying claims. But last year, Zurich paid 99% of insurance claims made by their UK customers. Zurich, an insurance company you can believe in. To find out more, visit zurich.co.uk/99.
Did you know Carphone Warehouse does business? That's why we understand how hard it is to go from this to this. But when you switch to the Samsung Galaxy S10 smartphone with O2, you don't have to. It's packed with features to help you stay on track on the move. So, if you want to end your summer feeling like this and not this, switch to save today with O2 and get the Samsung Galaxy S10 with 60 gigabytes of data for only £43 per month. Visit your nearest store or go online at business.carphonewarehouse.com/switch and save.
Feeling peckish? Introducing the Snack Geolocator Slingshot. Simply pull on your horn, open your window, and wait for the yummy goodness to find your exact location.
Oh dear, the Snack Geolocator Slingshot will never happen. But with a new BP Me Rewards card, getting more of the snacks you love more often will. Search BP Me Rewards to find out more. BP, every day, brighter.
Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October. Brexit will bring changes that affect businesses in many ways, particularly if you buy from EU suppliers, sell to EU customers, provide services to EU clients, and receive customer data from other businesses in the EU. Businesses need to prepare. Find out how at gov.uk/Brexit. Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October.
Jamie Theakston and Amanda Holden.
On breakfast. Tom Hanks is our special guest.
You're either being punished or rewarded. I'll let you decide.
I did do a whole show of grease on my front lawn when I was a kid. We charged everyone 10p. We raised a fiver and I gave it to Bishop's Waltham Gymnastics Club towards a new crash mat.
Do they get the crash mat?
I mean, it took a couple more years, but yeah.
It does happen to normal people like you. You've won £20,000. Well done.
I love this game.
Hot Breakfast
with Jamie Theakston and Amanda Holden. Weekdays from 6:30. Listen on your radio, global player, or smart speaker.
Play hard.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance live on Bloomberg Radio for our audience worldwide. Alongside Tom Keane, I'm Jonathan Ferro. 2 hours away from the opening bout, the news you need to know this hour. The UK's top court has inflicted an unprecedented legal defeat on Prime Minister Boris Johnson, ruling his suspension of Parliament was unlawful and calling all lawmakers to return as soon as possible. In the equity market, futures are marginally higher amid signs of easing tensions in the trade war. Bloomberg News has learned that China's granting new waivers for companies to purchase US soybeans without tariffs. And finally, shares of Volkswagen are nearly 3%, up nearly 3% in Germany, after these companies' CEO and chairman were both charged with market manipulation. Allegations say they failed to inform investors early enough about the diesel emissions scandal. Let me get you up to speed on that price action over in Frankfurt. The Volkswagen stock at the moment is down by 2.82%. There's some of the stories we're looking at in New York City. Here are some of the headlines from elsewhere. Here's Michael Barr.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Thank you, Tom. More Democrats are moving toward pushing for impeachment of President Donald Trump. It's after word that President Trump ordered his staff to freeze nearly $400 million in aid to Ukraine a few days before a phone call in which he pressured the Eastern European nation's leader to investigate the family of Joe Biden. The president denies any wrongdoing. It comes as President Trump speaks before the UN General Assembly this morning. Federal authorities have arrested an Army soldier who is accused of discussing a possible bomb attack with an FBI informant and targeting left-leaning activists and a media organization. Jared William Smith was charged with sharing bomb-making instructions online. Smith discussed presidential candidate Beto O'Rourke with an undercover informant. Day one of the murder trial against former Dallas police officer Amber Geiger focused on the relationship between her and her police partner. The white former officer told police she thought Botham Jean was an intruder in her apartment, but she was in the wrong apartment. Global news 24 hours a day on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Jonathan.
Michael, thank you. It's time now for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Report. It's brought to you by Burden Accountants and Advisors. Here's John Stashower.
John, most surprised about that giant comeback Sunday at Tampa Bay from 18 down at the half was that they did it without Saquon Barkley, last seen hopping off the field in Tampa. The Giants admitted yesterday Barkley's high ankle sprain will keep him out at least 1 month, maybe as long as 2. A devastating blow to be without their best player. But off their first win, the Giants are favored to get another. This Sunday they'll host Washington. The Redskins are 0-3. Last night they had a lopsided home loss to Chicago. The Bears led 28-0, went on to win 31-15. They forced 5. Washington turnovers. The still winless Jets are off this week. They're hoping Sam Darnold can return from mono after that. At Citi Field, Mets lost to the Marlins 8-4. Jorge Alfaro, 2 home runs, including a grand slam off Steven Matz. He gave up 6 runs, and his record fell to 10-10. And the Mets' official elimination from playoff contention could come as early as tonight. Milwaukee seized that second NL wild card by winning 15 of 17. Yankees tonight at Tampa Bay. Rays involved in the 1 pennant race that remains the AL wild card. The Rays won last night. They are a half game ahead of Cleveland. With the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update, I'm John Stashower.
John Stashower, thank you very much, sir. That's the sports. You've had the news. Here's your price action. Equity futures are firmer by 11 points, up by 1/3 of 1% on the S&P 500. In the bond market, we come in 2 basis points on a 10-year to 170. On a 2-year note, unchanged, a flatter yield curve. And in foreign exchange, sterling slightly positive after the court rules against Prime Minister Johnson.
From our world headquarters in New York, good morning, everyone. Bloomberg surveillance, Lexington and 59th Street, both streets blocked off for those of you wandering around Manhattan. Today, we welcome all of you coast to coast and worldwide as well. Terrific news flow this morning. Futures advance up 11. The Bloomberg NJIT STEM report brought to you by New Jersey Institute of Technology, a top 100 national university in the latest U.S. News and World Report. College rankings. Learn more at news.njit.edu. Here's Bob Moon.
Tom, Jonathan, good morning. Here's what's making news in science, technology, engineering, and math. It's not paradise lost just yet, but it's also all too easy to see the very real effects of climate change if you take a dive just off the southwest coast of the big island of Hawaii. A new Pacific heat wave is again threatening the iconic coral reefs that already suffered a round of what's called bleaching 4 years ago, when this area first found itself in literal hot water. Scientists are still doing the research to confirm the link to global warming, but ecologist Greg Asner says the evidence is hard to miss.
We also checked our temperature sensor network out here, and the temps are up about 3.5 degrees.
The damage from the last time was widespread, causing the death of up to half Hawaii's corals. Now, experts are seeing the early signs of what they expect to be a catastrophic event for Pacific reefs, perhaps the worst year yet for coral bleaching in Hawaii. June, July, and parts of August all experienced the hottest ocean temperatures ever recorded around the Hawaiian Islands, harming the algae that gives coral its color until it turns white. The head of the Kahaluu Bay Education Center, Cindy Punahauli Kennedy, can only hope the stress caused by the warm water is brief. Prolonged stress can kill the fragile creatures, and she knows well that feeling of helplessness the last time this happened.
It was devastating for us to not be able to do anything. We just watch the corals die.
Climate change is just part of the problem. Stomping tourists, killer sunscreen chemicals, and industrial wastewater are also causing coral stress. That's the Bloomberg NJIT STEM report. Tom, Jonathan.
Bob Moon, thanks so much. 5 things you need to know to start your Tuesday. Brought to you by Interactive Brokers, rated #1 best online broker in 2019 and low-cost online broker for the 18th consecutive year by Barron's. Learn why at ibkr.com/YIB. It's like ET, Boris phone home. Wow, there must be some conversations going on right now.
I think there's a lot of conversations going on right now. Early this morning in New York City, the Prime Minister of the UK was set to meet with several leaders today
and give a speech
at the UN General Assembly and address the UN too, Tom. And what's going to be interesting is whether he hangs around or flies back, because according to the top court, Parliament's coming back, and according to the Speaker of the House, he's coming back tomorrow morning.
Well, on Wednesday, is it Wednesday 12 noon London time?
11:30 local time, yeah.
And who knows what the schedule is? We haven't got that far yet. The president will speak in, as somebody said yesterday, he loves getting in front of the green marble at the UN. I mean, the showtime of it. But
front and center.
This will be fascinating.
I think it's going to be absolutely fascinating. We don't have a strong steer on what the focus of the speech will be.
I like that, yeah.
Could be anything. Could be Iran. Could be trade.
Kevin Cirilli says Iran, else. But I think, given the news flow, he makes it up as he goes.
Well, just to give you some insight into the room and where various leaders will be sitting, on the second row is where the Iranian delegation could possibly be seated. Whether they turn up for this speech is the could, because I don't know whether they will show up, given that it might actually be about them. So that's going to be fascinating to see how this plays out in the coming hours. We believe that speech could take place somewhere around 10 Eastern time this morning. So somewhere in and around 10 Eastern time.
So when you and I go out to our luxury Rockstar breakfast, we may not be able to get to it?
We might not be able to reach it this morning.
But it's at McDonald's on 3rd Avenue.
I think a lot of roads will be shut.
Yeah, well, maybe we can get to the McDonald's.
We'll make it there.
Number 2 value meal, no ketchup.
That's what you love, isn't it?
Marilyn Watson, persistent low rates. Is institutional global Wall Street ready for persistent low rates?
I don't know if they're ready. No. I can certainly say that many people are hoping that that's not going to be how this plays out. Hope is not really the greatest base case.
10 days ago, the Times of London, there was that lead business story article. The actuarial assumption of an annuity, a retirement annuity in London, is 4.1%. That's out front of the United States, I would suggest.
I don't know what people are going to do, Tom, when reality really sets in as to what is about to happen here. If you stayed this low for this long, keep working might be the answer.
And this goes back to Bill Dudley yesterday, and that the economists are talking to a narrow elite group of people, and the mail I get from people is this has huge effect on people that aren't worried about, the microeconomics of the moment. Equities, we were up 11, we sustained back above 3,000 on SPX.
We haven't done a whole lot for about 12 months, have we? The S&P 500 just in and around 3,000, up, tested, lives there for a little bit,
and on earnings,
drops lower again.
And Greg Boodle at BNP Paribas, they're, if anything, more cautious than Morgan Stanley. They've got a real caution.
Earnings season has been really, really interesting as the year has gone on. Throughout the year, it's actually been really fascinating.
So the Brewers, are going to be the second wild card in the National League.
Is that right?
That's right.
What happened to the Mets?
I bring this up because the Mets is what they did. I bring this up, John, because baseball used to be riveting in September and October, and they've lost the magic. It's a huge interest.
Well, that's because they're playing how many games a year?
That's part of it, but also, the wild card series is great because it's the best. There's one game, and then there's the best of 5 games, not 7 games.
Let me tell you my experience. Being an AC Milan fan, the Milan derby was like the biggest game of the year. It happens twice in the league all year, and every time it happens, it's huge. That's what the Red Sox Yankees should feel like.
Baseball has changed. That would be my headline. Send us emails on that if you'd like. John Farrow and Tom King. This is Bloomberg.
Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Elite advisory firms rely on BNY Mellon's Pershing to meet the needs of their most complex clients. Karen Novak, Chief Operating Officer at Pershing Advisor Solutions, explains how.
At BNY Mellon's Pershing, we bring customized insights and strategies to help you grow your advisory business and stay on the leading edge. We can support the needs of your most sophisticated clients with a full range of investment and wealth management solutions, from access to private banking to consolidated bank and brokerage custody. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength and high-touch service that BNY Mellon's Pershing can provide. Are you well positioned to stand out from your competition?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Brokerage custody provided by Pershing LLC and other services provided by Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC. Both members of FINRA and SIPC. Private banking and bank custody provided by BNY Mellon NA. Member FDIC.
With the Bloomberg Business of Sports report, I'm Michael.
1 in 10 Londoners surveyed said they'll give more to charity in the next 12 months. Are you one of them? At CAF, we help generous people like you support their favourite charities by making giving simple. And we provide charities with the tools they need to perform at their best. So together, we can make a bigger difference for our communities. We're a charity and a champion for better giving. We are CAF, and we make giving count. Visit cafonline.org to find out more.
For people who want to feel happier, stronger, fitter, get further, faster, better. For people who want to, but don't always manage to. It doesn't matter how you want to do it, who you want to do it with. It matters that you want to. Virgin Active. We'll find a way for you. Join in September and get 15% off each month on 12-month memberships. Visit virginactive.co.uk. Participating gyms. Terms and conditions apply.
UWE Bristol thinks your child's next step should be an exciting one, and that it should start right here on this Tuesday afternoon, when you register them for our open day. Then, on the 5th of October, they'll come and discover that UWE Bristol gives them more than a university with state-of-the-art facilities, more than academic support to help them thrive, more than real-world connections with practical experiences that complement their studies, and more than a city with the buzz of Bristol. Help them choose more than a degree. Choose a 360-degree experience. To register them for an open day, search UWE Bristol today. After that, anything is possible.
1 in 2 people believe they should check their work email on holiday. 1 in 3 believe it's okay to eat a colleague's lunch. And 1 in 14 believe it's okay to steal loo roll from work. People believe all sorts of strange things. Some people believe that insurance companies try to avoid paying claims. But last year, Zurich paid 99% of insurance claims made by their UK customers. Zurich, an insurance company you can believe in. To find out more, visit zurich.co.uk/99.
With Jet2 Holidays, you decide how long you holiday for. 7 or 14 nights? How about 3, 12, or even 55? Our flexible durations mean you can holiday to your budget. So book now. Jet2 Holidays. Package holidays you can trust. APTA and ATOL protected.
Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
Britain's highest court has ruled Prime Minister Boris Johnson's decision to shut down Parliament in the run-up to Brexit is illegal. The announcement from President of UK Supreme Court and Senior Judge Brenda Hale.
It had the effect of frustrating or preventing the ability of Parliament to carry out its constitutional functions without reasonable justification.
House of Commons Speaker John Bercow says Parliament will go back into session tomorrow. Federal authorities have arrested 24-year-old Army Private Jared William Smith. He's accused of discussing a possible bomb attack with an FBI informant and targeting left-leaning activists and a media organization. Correspondent Jessica Schneider has more.
At least one of these plots, an FBI bomb tech who was later consulted, said if the bomb had been properly constructed, it could have detonated.
House Democrats will hold a caucus meeting today as calls for impeaching President Trump are now coming from moderate members in swing districts. Stock futures are higher on Wall Street. I'm Michael Toscano.
Politics, policy, power, and law. We want you to know what to expect.
What are your concerns about this deal?
And be surprised by what you hear.
They were breaking the law.
Weekdays at noon Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. And U.S. stock index futures on the rise along with European shares, while Asian shares rose modestly as investors weigh hopes for high-level trade talks next month between the U.S. and China against mixed economic data from around the globe. The pound rallying after the U.K. Supreme Court said Prime Minister Boris Johnson's suspension of Parliament was unlawful. And we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up about 11 points. Dow futures up 91. NASDAQ futures up 32. The DAX in Germany is up less than 0.1%. 10-year Treasury up 6/32, yield 1.70%. Yield on the 2-year 1.68%. NYMEX crude oil down 1% or 60 cents to 58.07 a barrel. COMEX gold down 0.25% or $3.60 to $15.27.90 an ounce. The euro, 1.0998 against the dollar. The British pound, 1.2476. And the yen is at 107.69. Volkswagen's two top leaders were charged with market manipulation in Germany over allegations they failed to inform investors early enough about the diesel emissions scandal. And Anheuser-Busch InBev has pulled off one of the year's biggest initial public offerings, the second time around, raising about $5 billion by listing its Asian unit in Hong Kong 2 months after scrapping the original share sale. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and John.
Karen, thanks so much. We come to you this morning from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios in New York. We thank Interactive Brokers for their real commitment to our conversation on economics, finance, investment, and Brexit.
And Brexit.
It just keeps going.
Are you sure that's what you want to focus on?
That's what we're going to focus on right
crazy
now.
Town.
We can do that with a gentleman who's really quite informed. He's with Chatham House, which is one of the great think tanks of London. I've walked by their fancy offices. They're very British and all that. Thomas Raines is in there having tea at the appropriate hour, and he joins us right now. Thomas Raines, good morning. I see just one headline coming out. I'm not quite sure how current it is that Jeremy Corbyn at the Labour conference will move up his speech one day. There's an immediacy of the next 24 hours. Do you have a hint or a guesstimate of what the Prime Minister will do, worried about whether the Mets will make it in Manhattan?
That's a great question. Thanks for having me on. I think it's, at this point, probably Boris Johnson will just hold fire. What we know will happen as a result of the court judgment is that Parliament will return to sitting very shortly. So the order of prorogation to suspend Parliament was unlawful. So MPs will go back to business in the Commons, but we don't actually know what they're going to do with this extra time that they have. There are lots of calls for Boris Johnson to resign. I suspect he will resist those calls for now, but in a way, what he would like, and what all of the parties have said they want, is a general election. And the question is really about how that comes about.
I mean, maybe, John, they'll figure out what to do with the Tots. That seems to be a London issue
You really want to make this about sport, don't you?
No, well, it is a sport.
You bring in the Mets for Thomas Raines.
Yes, it's okay. I mean, Brexit is a sport. It goes on and on and on.
A sport that not many people like watching at the moment. Look, Thomas, here's a question for you. The Prime Minister is quite clearly lost in Parliament. He's lost in court. Does that necessarily mean he loses in the court of public opinion?
I think that's much less clear. So in some ways, and there is a theory that this court judgment isn't as bad politically for Boris Johnson as it is legally. He has tried to present the narrative that he is the one sort of true believer in Brexit who is committed to making it happen, and against him you have the Labour Party, you have a Remain Parliament, and now you have judges. So in some ways it might add to the narrative that he has to say, look, I'm the only one who can deliver this. It's the establishment against me trying to block Brexit. Having said that, this is such a clear and damning verdict. It wasn't a judgment about Brexit as much as he will be trying to frame it. It was a judgment about the power of the executive branch to suspend Parliament, and this was a powerful assertion of the rule of law and of parliamentary sovereignty. I think it's quite difficult to spin that, but he will certainly try. He wants to try and bring back as many of those Brexit Party voters, so people who've gone towards Nigel Farage's Brexit Party in the European elections, who've sort of risen out of nowhere in the last few months, and he'll try as much as possible to win them back.
Tom Raines, your claim is the tribes. You talk about the European tribes. Define the Farage tribe of England and how they, and I mean England, and how they respond to this historic moment for the nation.
Well, what's interesting about this is a sort of subtext to it, which is that the chief sort of political advisor to Boris Johnson is Dominic Cummings. Now, he ran the main Leave campaign, but he used to have terrible fights during the referendum campaign with Nigel Farage and his colleagues, who ran a slightly different campaign, which was much more focused on immigration and other issues. And there's a real political split there, and they are coming out with the knives for Dominic Cummings now. There are calls on Twitter from actually all across both the Brexit Party and the Conservative Party for Cummings to resign. They hold him responsible for this prorogation strategy. So there is a sort of political split behind the scenes between those two. I think Brexit Party voters, many of whom will probably not be put off by Johnson's condemnation by the court. There is a hardcore British public opinion which is disproportionately English, as you mentioned. It tends to be older voters. It tends to be people outside of the big cities who feel that Brexit is the most important political issue that they face. They believe that Parliament and others are trying to block it, and I doubt that they will be too concerned in terms of their support for Brexit because of the judgment of the court.
Thomas, this is embarrassing for the Prime Minister. I imagine the front pages won't be favourable to the Prime Minister tomorrow, but I wonder if the Prime Minister ultimately ends up with what he wants. Jeremy Corbyn will address his party and the membership as soon as today. When he does that, Thomas, doesn't it make it harder for him to avoid the calls for a general election now? Parliament will come back tomorrow, and I have no doubt the Prime Minister will present them with the same question. If you want me out, if you think I should resign, let's have an election. How do they avoid that for the next 6 weeks?
With significant difficulty. I think one way to do it is that you could have a vote of no confidence in the Prime Minister and you try to install a temporary government. The real challenge here is about the extension of the Article 50 negotiations. We have this deadline of October the 31st when the UK is supposed to leave the European Union. Parliament is determined that that date doesn't pass and the UK leaves with no deal. So you have this clear impasse, and basically the Labour Party and the other opposition parties don't trust Boris Johnson not to kind of move the UK over that cliff edge. So the real question is, can they find another way round that they feel that they can guarantee the UK won't leave without a deal? One way to do that would be to have a temporary leader in government. The real so you had a vote of no confidence, sort of government of national unity. But the only way I think that could happen is if Conservative members of Parliament who've lost the whip, so they've basically been expelled from their party, vote for that. And it's not clear that they will now.
Tom Raines, this is brilliant. It's so confusing. You and I have to have a beverage of our choice on the second floor of rules if we're going to get through this. Forget about the complexity. Doesn't the Prime Minister call a general election this morning in Manhattan, fly home, and call their bluff on just have an election?
Well, it's not. The thing is, with the change that we had under the previous Cameron government, it's not in the gift of the Prime Minister to simply call an election. He needs Parliament's support. He is a very weak Prime Minister in Parliament. He has no majority whatsoever.
Exactly.
And so he's not really. So basically, they could call his bluff and say, well, no, we'll wait until after the 31st of October.
Okay.
We'll have an election then. But then we still have this challenge of how do you get Boris Johnson to ask for the extension that we need, and then we might have another legal fight.
John, save me.
I know you're very frustrated.
I'm like an American.
Tom, we have a fixed-term Parliament Act, which ultimately means you need a certain amount of MPs to vote for an election, and right now the Prime Minister doesn't have enough of those MPs to get that election through, unless the opposition start to come with him.
Our electoral process is so simple.
Oh yeah, a whole 2 years, a whole 2 years every 4 years, building up to the next one. Thomas, we won't go there. If we had an election today, what would that result look like if the polls are any guide at the moment, Thomas?
I hate to keep answering questions with don't really know, but that nobody really knows. So at the moment, the Conservative Party are doing relatively well in the polls. Labour are doing relatively poorly. The Conservatives are sort of mid-30s. Labour are mid-20s. The Liberal Democrats, which is the party most opposed to Brexit, are hot on Labour's heels. And just behind them is the Brexit Party. So we have 4 parties in play in a system which is used to having sort of 2 or 2.5 parties in play. So that makes all of the kind of modelling that people normally use to predict elections very difficult to use in this circumstance. I think you could have a situation where the Conservatives end up as the largest party in the House of Commons but without a majority, and you have a Labour minority government which is supported by the Liberal Democrats and the SNP, and that will lead us to almost certainly a second referendum on Brexit.
Tom Raines, thank you so much for the update. Confusion reigns.
Thank you, Tom. That's every single segment we do on Brexit.
They
Confusion reigns.
The Justice quoted 1611, 1689.
You love all that stuff, don't you?
It was like, we don't do that in America. We're not going back to the Pilgrims,
Should we get a clip of that? We'll get a clip of that in the next hour. just so you can enjoy that moment once again.
It's just like, it was like, Poldark was there sitting in the room or something.
Do you still watch Poldark?
Of course we have to watch.
Do you want to tell our listeners what on earth Poldark is?
Scarlet Fu has me on Poldark.
What is Poldark? What is Poldark?
Poldark is like soap opera 1805.
You watch 1805 soap operas?
Pre-Regency England.
Is this what you're doing on the weekend?
Yeah, it's like Downton Abbey before the Downton.
This is so sad.
1 in 4 children believe potatoes grow on trees. 1 in 5 children believe fish fingers are made from chicken. And 1 in 8 adults believe the moon landings didn't happen. People believe all sorts of strange things. Some people believe that insurance companies try to avoid paying claims. But last year, Zurich paid 99% of insurance claims made by their UK customers. Zurich, an insurance company you can believe in. To find out more, visit zurich.co.uk/99.
At Jet2 Holidays, we offer you the full package. Flights, transfers, accommodation, and 22 kilograms of baggage included. But that's not all. We also give you peace of mind because we've been named a Which recommended provider for package holidays. Jet2 Holidays. Package holidays you can trust. APTA and ATO protected.
And we have Mary on the line. Hello, Mary.
Hi, Gary. The song I'd like to request is Take Me Breath Away. It reminds me of a bad relationship I once had.
Oh, no.
Yeah, they fleeced me of my money, were super clingy, suffocating, in fact. I couldn't breathe. But I am now free of them, and I've never felt better.
Nice one, Mary. Now, is there anything you'd like to say to that old flame?
Yeah, but unfortunately, cigarettes can't really hear you.
Stoptober. It's not you, it's them. Join the thousands of others quitting smoking this October. Search Stoptober.
Capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
The good news is the economy is strong. The bad news is the economy is strong.
Financial crises take a really long time to recover from.
Finance.
The strong job market's pulling people back in.
You can't have for very long, monetary union without a fiscal union.
Investment.
What we preach is extreme diversification.
It's hard to have sustained productivity without capital investment.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. John Farrow and Tom Keene. Thank you for being with us. Good morning, Boston, New York, Washington. Particularly good morning to New York with horrific traffic, Midtown Manhattan, the known worlds here, including Boris Johnson and the world awaiting to see what his travel plans are after a truly historic moment in Britain. We'll go to that here through the hour with, of course, our authority on all of the United Kingdom, one John Farrow. Bloomberg Surveillance this morning, futures up 10. Always brought to you by Cone Resnick. Check out Business of Baseball, an original MLB video series exploring the business side of America's pastime. Visit ConeResnick.com/MLB ConeResnick. Advisory Assurance Tax. John, 7 days in a row lower yields. Am I close on that?
I think we might have broken that in yesterday's session. I think.
Okay,
let me just
right
check
at the end,
10-year. Let me
maybe.
just check the 10-year for you. In yesterday's session, we did just close with yields slightly higher. Just slightly
1.71% on the 10-year. The 30-year bond was a 214, now 215 as well. Let's do this. We're going to rip up the script here. Julian Emanuel with us with UBS.
We're doing Brexit with Julian.
No, I'm not going to do. Well, we could.
I wish you could see his face
got
right
as
now.
much
He
authority.
hates the idea of doing Brexit.
He's got as much authority as I do on Brexit. Julian Emanuel, you and thank you for listening yesterday to our interview with William Dudley. Translate for the audience what you heard yesterday from the former president of the New York Fed. To review, we opened with the repo debate, and then we went to his opinion piece, where the last paragraph really touched upon a third rail of economics, how the Fed could affect politics of the 2020 election. What did you hear from Dr. Dudley yesterday?
Well, first off, let's talk about the repo, okay? And for those of us, and I assume that that's the majority of the audience, who do not remember how the financial markets functioned in the 1990s, this is where we're going. We're going back to the 1990s. It is not something that we should be afraid of. The Fed was very active in, repo on, a standing facility. We may not get to a standing facility, but in fact, it could become an opportunity for the Fed. By being there, you could actually steepen the yield curve by gently expanding the balance sheet in a non-QE.
Dr. Dudley gave us a company line, as you expect he would, as a former public official. Are you as calm as he appeared to be about business as usual?
Well, it's not going to be business as usual. You could tell by the fact that, when they originally came out last week, they had to cancel it and then restart it 5 or 10 minutes later. So the plumbing is a little bit in need of retooling, but they will get there and it will be business.
Are they doing a repo today?
I believe it continues through to October.
Today.
Yeah, I believe there's an operation every day through to October, isn't there, Julian?
It is through October, and it wouldn't be a surprise at all, particularly given the tariffs October 15th, but the year end, it may continue all the way through.
Our repurchase agreement expert, Colin of the Twins, says yes, they'll be doing something today. Yes.
And then possibly it becomes a more permanent standing facility, which essentially is what the former New York Fed president said yesterday. Front and center this morning, we get back to the old stories. Trade, the back and forth over what happened with that farm in Montana, why the visit did not happen. We have learned that the United States ordered the Chinese not to visit the farm. Whatever anyone is reading into all of this, I do think it was probably wise not to allow the Chinese to go to these small areas of the United States, to visit farms, to visit a single state. And I'll tell you why, Julian. I think it plays with domestic politics. It's not good for the US side of the trade talks to allow the Chinese to be seen to be this important factor in somewhere as significant as farmlands in the United States. I just don't think that sends the right message at a time the US wants to negotiate a broader trade deal beyond just agricultural goods.
No, it doesn't. And in fact, it was really the right call to have been made, and China was very clear, and then the U.S. sort of embellished it, that it wasn't anything to do with ill will in the talks themselves, and markets adjusted appropriately.
And now the talks lead to more talks. October 7th, the week of, the Chinese Vice Premier will come over here to Washington. And in many ways, Julian, we're back to square one. We're back to May. And I don't even know if we're back to May if it's that good, because back in May, we were all the way there. We had 10% left. And it seems to me, I'm still not clear on whether we still have that last 10% to work out, Julian, or whether it's a whole lot more than that.
Well, that is not clear, and that won't be clear until people step in front of the microphone. But the difference is that you are much closer to election 2020 than you were then, and there is an imperative there. Again, we go back to this whole idea. President Trump knows that a soft economy was what made George H.W. Bush a one-term president in 1992. A deal is part of making sure that we grow north of 2% next year.
Julian Emanuel with us, equities and derivatives at BTIG, their strategist. Your research note is a page and a half, and it is brutal. Get on board by the banks. Why?
Essentially, from our point of view, this is all about the sort of the overshoot. You can call it tulips, you can call it tech stocks in 2000, but the frenzy that we saw of bond buying and the preponderance of, what topped out is $17 trillion in negative yields, and the moves in August were met with the correct response in September. Massive issuance from corporates, from governments, from this morning we hear from hedge funds, et cetera, at the same time that the U.S. economy is in much better shape than everyone thought it was 3 months ago.
You think we're coming out the other side of the growth scare? Is that what you believe?
Yes, we do.
What are the signs that you see that underpin that conviction?
Well, again, first of all, inflation is moving, by certain measures, to multi-year highs. Core CPI, as well. You've seen the surprise indices. Economists have grossly underestimated the strength of the economy over the last several months. And again, this whole idea, look, it may have happened naturally, but this mere fact of advancing the talks with China, which started disseminating in the month of September, really is improving the confidence. Put it all together, we don't think that you're going to have a soft spot next year prior to the election.
For anyone who wants to look at that data, if you happen to have a Bloomberg in front of you, ECSU is the function on the terminal, just to get a snapshot of the surprise index here in the United States on the Bloomberg. And Tom, it has picked up quite a lot in the last couple of months. But what it doesn't show you is a turnaround in the trend, Julian. It just shows you a surprise relative to pretty bad expectations. Have you seen anything that convinces you that the tide is turning, the trend is turning?
Well, we think that first of all, the most important thing is the consumer, okay? Consumer sentiment has remained elevated throughout a lot of the last 2 years, took a dip earlier this year, appears to be stabilizing. The consumer is still strong. The employment picture, almost by virtue of its situation, assures that the consumer is strong. And this, to us, looks a lot like 2016, when manufacturing slipped into recession, and you ended up having the recession that wasn't, because the consumer stayed strong.
Happiest guy in the room at the Bloomberg Global Business Forum that we've got coming up will be one James Dimon of J.P. Morgan. I just looked at the chart. I didn't realize, in the day-to-day gloom about finance in the world, J.P. Morgan record high, basically a moonshot, up 100% since in the last 4 years as well. How can I be in these banks if they've had such a large move? How do I acquire new shares now?
Well, first of all, relatively speaking, they're still cheap versus their history and versus the rest of the S&P 500. But the real compelling story is the cash return story between buybacks and dividends. And, and even in a headwind environment of interest rates, you're not really getting a ton of complaint about it.
John, J.P. Morgan, 3% yield, 15% 5-year dividend growth rate. Major shout out to Charles Peabody of Portales Partners, who was 4 years out front in this. He nailed the use of cash story.
He did, but he didn't nail the turnaround that we're seeing in the equity market for the banks this year. I know it feels dreadful, but to Tom's point, J.P. Morgan's done okay. Citi's up more than 30%. Julian, some of these big names on Wall Street have had actually a decent year in terms of stock market returns. What underpins that move that it can continue? Where do you see that continuing, Julian? Do they get the growth volume? Do they get the volume in loans? Where does the profitability and revenue growth come from?
So essentially, again, it goes back to the consumer who is steady. It goes back to lending, which has been, reasonably strong. But the linchpin is the boost to confidence from higher yields, the boost to profitability from higher yields, and, potentially the boost to, really trading volumes and volatility from higher yields.
Julian, a big call that hinges on higher yields. Going to be a lot of doubters listening. Julian Emanuel, great to have you with us. Some big calls there. BTIG, Chief Equity and Derivative Strategist.
Just looking to see if the president's tweeting. He's not tweeting yet.
Well, he's busy this morning, isn't he?
He's busy, and he's got a lot going on. And I came down the Golden Mile there, and all blocked off at 59th Street and forward to the president's abode above Gucci.
I believe he'll be making his moves at around 9:30 Eastern to arrive at the United Nations General Assembly with the First Lady of the United States. From New York this morning, good morning to you all.
And now the news in New York City. Here's Michael Barr.
Tom, Jonathan, thank you very much. The Speaker of Britain's House of Commons says Parliament will resume its deliberations Wednesday at 11:30 a.m. John Bercow said today that there will be full scope for emergency debates following the Supreme Court's ruling that the government's suspension of Parliament was illegal and void. A controversial phone call is leading to new calls to impeach President Trump. A person familiar with the matter says President Trump directed his acting chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney, to hold back almost $400 million in military aid to Ukraine ahead of the president's July phone call with the president of that country. The Wall Street Journal reported last week that the president pressured the Ukrainian leader to investigate business dealings of the son of former Vice President Joe Biden. Global news 24 hours a day on air and at TikTok on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Jonathan?
Michael Barr, thank you very much, sir. From New York, futures are positive on the S&P 500. We're up 9 points. We're up 1/3%. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system you can. Go boldly toward change with SCI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SCI's Investment Manager Services. At SCI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SCI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SCI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong.
Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
1 in 10 Londoners surveyed said they'll give more to charity in the next 12 months. Are you one of them? At CAF, we help generous people like you support their favourite charities by making giving simple. And we provide charities with the tools they need to perform at their best. So together, we can make a bigger difference for our communities. We're a charity and a champion for better giving. We are CAF, and we make giving count. Visit cafonline.org to find out more.
We can't make payday come any quicker. We can't make the kettle boil any faster. And sorry, we can't speed up the traffic in Watford. But we can speed up the way you submit an energy meter reading. The British Gas app lets you book an engineer, as well as claim rewards and manage your account all within minutes. So you can spend less time running your home and more time enjoying it. Download the British Gas app today.
Working on a tablet has never been so good, whatever you're doing. With the Samsung Galaxy Tab S6, you've got all the power of a PC. It's sleek, slender and stylish, with a battery life of up to 14 hours. But it's not all work, you know. Get creative with the advanced S Pen, or enjoy better gaming and movies. With its epic 10.5-inch screen and quad AKG speakers. We'll also give you an extra £50 off the Tab S6 when you trade in your old tablet or laptop. At Curry's PC World. T's and C's apply.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And then they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
Over 9,000 scooters and motorbikes were stolen in London last year. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover it to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
For people who want to feel happier, stronger, fitter, get further, faster, better. For people who want to, but don't always manage to. It doesn't matter how you want to do it, who you want to do it with. It matters that you want to. Virgin Active. We'll find a way for you. Join in September and get 15% off each month on 12-month memberships. Visit virginactive.co.uk. Participating gyms. Terms and conditions apply.
Conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Paul Allen.
Joining us now, we have Abbott Downing at Deputy CIO Carol Schleif. What a quiet day it was on U.S. equity markets. Volatility pretty much evaporating, really. Seems to be that equities really looking for a catalyst here. What's going to provide it?
Perhaps the earnings season in a couple of weeks, and I think until then, you've got pretty equally balanced. Even if it's surprising, the surprises come from opposite sides. You had worse business news and better consumer news. So I think a lot of people don't want to get all the way out, but don't necessarily want to commit even more. And so you'll have that sort of push me, pull you kind of tension until we get into earnings season.
Yeah, what are your expectations for earnings season? Because it appears that a lot of the gains we've seen in equity markets over the past few weeks have really been due to future promises of Fed easing. What's your opinion?
I think a piece of that, but the underlying economy is still in pretty reasonable shape. Even globally, there's clouds on the horizon, if you will, but not necessarily indications of a huge next recession coming. And so you've got good consumer confidence and spending in the U.S., and the U.S. has been, in prior markets, has been the engine of global growth. And so I think there's a big balance that way that people are looking for and waiting on.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and futures are higher this morning. Let's go to the First Word breaking news desk for today's morning call. Here's Bill Maloney. Bill, good morning.
And good morning, Karen. U.S. futures are maintaining their gains since the last time we spoke. The Dow futures up 69 points, S&P's gained 9, and NASDAQ futures climb by 26. The U.S. 10-year yield at 1.7%. Gold is little changed, while European markets are mostly higher, led by gains in Italy and Spain. Back in the U.S. on the economic front at 9 o'clock, the House Price Index. And at 10 o'clock, Richmond Fed and consumer confidence. After the bell last night, in deal news, Facebook is said to pay $500 million to $1 billion for brain computing startup CTRL Labs. And regarding earnings this morning, AutoZone EPS missed the lowest estimates. In other news, KeyBank said that Netflix risk-reward going into Q3 looks challenging. Lockheed Martin won a $4.6 billion contract, and Fluor cut its dividend and is selling its government and equipment business. Wrapping things up, Wynn Resorts was upgraded to buy over at Goldman Sachs, and Brinker was cut to neutral over at J.P. Morgan. Live from the First Breaking News Desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Karen.
All right, Bill, thank you. And to hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg, type squawk on your terminal, SQUAWK. And Daimler was fined €870 million for a negligent violation of supervisory duties in the area of vehicle certification. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and John.
Karen, thanks so much. John, it's time for the repo report.
The repo report from the New York Fed.
We're getting used to this.
Another operation, two times oversubscribed. Those headlines dropping at the same time. Comments from Boris Johnson come through. The Prime Minister saying the UK government will respect the UK court ruling, but he goes on to say that he strongly disagrees with the decision of the Supreme Court. He says the claimants in the court want to frustrate Brexit. And I imagine this is how it will be spun, Tom, that these individuals pushing to block his way of doing things are just frustrating the will of the people and the Brexiteers.
Before we get to our next esteemed guest on the Eagles losing this weekend, can I point out that it was a unanimous decision, like on both of the two key legal issues? I mean, Bush v. Gore was 5-4, whatever. I mean, I get that, but does unanimous mean anything in your world?
But to be clear here, the Prime Minister is not going after the court. He's going after the claimants, saying that they want to frustrate Brexit. And I think this will be the stance through the day as well. If you think about it, Tom, you can look very statesmanlike through the day, being here at the UN, standing alongside other foreign leaders and making the point that the Parliament, that the courts are frustrating Brexit. And I think you can make that point quite well if you are Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Yeah. And I imagine that's what the strategists will be discussing at the moment as to whether he should return home or stay here in New York.
Sterling stronger, 124.80, lifting up nicely above where we were during this speech as well. In the time that we've got left, Kevin Cerulli joins us. He's our chief Washington correspondent. Kevin, a basic question. When the president gives a big speech like this, does he read off the script, or is he going to find moments, interludes, to say what's really on his mind?
He'll read off the script, but he might break away occasionally, but typically for events like this, they'll read off the prompter.
Okay, what's the theme here? I mean, is he fired up about Iran within your reports and your reporting, or is it Ukraine, or is it something out of left field?
Well, I think a broader theme will be Iran, but several months ago, if you remember, when Secretary of State Mike Pompeo actually gave an address to the UN and was critical of the United Nations as a collective body as a whole, I think you could see potentially some parts of the speech where President Trump raises concerns about the UN as a whole deliberative body, because that's been something of a theme for his presidency.
Kevin, just in terms of the topics that they can address today, it could literally be anything. If you had a steer in Washington on anything at all, what the focus of this speech will be?
I think it'll be Iran, Jonathan. I also think you could hear him criticize the international agreements as a whole. But I also think, to some extent, some unifying themes on global national security. But this is a really interesting moment in President Trump's term, simply because of the developments overseas, but also the backdrop to all of this being Ukraine here in the United States has captured the attention of domestic politics.
Kevin, I mentioned it an hour and a half ago. Mike Allen wrote for Axios today, and it's 3 quick paragraphs, and it's usual Axios synthesis, but they showed an immediacy of the Democratic Party counting of votes by Speaker Pelosi about moving to beginning the process of impeachment. Is that even possible in the next coming days?
Yes, in the sense of what that process entails out of the House Judiciary Committee. There's going to be a hearing on Thursday with regards to the Ukraine whistleblower. But when you look at the math in the Senate, in terms of actually removing the president from office,
I get that.
That's not possible
at
all.
I agree with that in the Senate, but are we really that close to an immediacy of the House majority beginning this process? I was really taken aback by the Axios essay.
It appears. I mean, it appears that for whatever reason, the Ukraine whistleblower has added new energy to those Democrats in the House for there to be impeachment. I don't want to say it's catching people off guard, but it's making those Democrats in more moderate districts more likely to vote for impeachment.
Well, that's right where I wanted to go, because Kevin, viscerally, you understand those moderate districts of Pennsylvania where the Democrats won. If they were to begin this process, are those Democrats at risk?
Yes, very much so. In the sense that if you go to suburban Philadelphia or you go to Western Pennsylvania to Connor Lamb country, those Democrats ran on the notion that they would find areas to work with the president where they could. Case in point, USMCA. Case in point, a host of some different deregulatory policies as it pertains to the energy sector. So, politically, that's a risk, that's a gamble for Democrats should they impeach him.
Hugely valuable. Kevin Cerulli, thank you so much, our Chief Washington correspondent. Hugely valuable this morning. We forget that Mr. Cerulli really started at the beginning of this Republican process. His experience of just day-to-day grind on the campaign trail has been extraordinary.
He used to follow Donald Trump, the candidate, around, didn't he?
Sterling, 124.76. We're looking for further headlines from a...
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Stock futures indicate a higher Wall Street open this morning on trade optimism. S&P futures up 9, NASDAQ futures up 26, Dow futures up 77. Crude oil is down 1% at $58 a barrel. Stocks were mainly little changed on Wall Street yesterday. Amazon tomorrow is scheduled to announce its new Alexa-driven devices. The company has not said what products are coming, but Bloomberg has previously reported that Amazon is working on Alexa-powered earbuds, a better-sounding Echo smart speaker, a health tracker, and a domestic robot. The UK government has ordered an investigation into the role of Thomas Cook's management in the collapse of the 178-year-old tour operator. The British government started bringing back more than 150,000 stranded tourists yesterday after fundraising talks for the company failed. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients, and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us number 1 in client support, number 1 in firm leadership, number 1 in operational support, number 1 in compensation, number 1 in professional development support, and number 1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
1 in 2 people believe they should check their work email on holiday. 1 in 3 believe it's okay to eat a colleague's lunch. And 1 in 14 believe it's okay to steal loo roll from work. People believe all sorts of strange things. Some people believe that insurance companies try to avoid paying claims. But last year, Zurich paid 99% of insurance claims made by their UK customers. Zurich, an insurance company you can believe in. To find out more, visit zurich.co.uk/99.
We could play epic music, or we could speak in an overdramatic tone, or even set off fireworks. But that's just not smarty. Instead, we let our offer do the talking. Right now, you can grab 25% off our unlimited data SIM. That's just $18.75 a month with no speed restrictions, no credit check, and no long contract to tie you in. Now that's smarty. Just search Smarty Mobile and switch today. It's easy. Offer available for a limited time only. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
Need to get your chocolate fix, like, now? Simply press the dashboard chocolate button to zap the chocolate of your choice right into your hand.
A dashboard chocolate button chocolate teleporter will never happen. But with a new BP Me Rewards card, getting more of the treats you love more often will. Search BP Me Rewards to find out more. BP, every day, brighter.
Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October. Brexit will bring changes that affect businesses in many ways, particularly if you buy from EU suppliers, sell to EU customers, provide services to EU clients, and receive customer data from other businesses in the EU. Businesses need to prepare. Find out how at gov.uk/Brexit. Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October.
Jamie Theakston and Amanda Holden.
Hard breakfast. Tom Hanks is our special guest.
You're either being punished or rewarded. I'll let you decide.
I did do a whole show of Grease on my front lawn when I was a kid. We charged everyone 10p. We raised a £5 and I gave it to Bishop's Waltham Gymnastics Club towards a new crash mat.
Do they get the crash mat?
I mean, it took a couple more years, but yeah.
It does happen to normal people like you. You've won £20,000. Well done.
I love this game.
Hard breakfast
with Jamie Theakston and Amanda Holden. Weekdays from 6:30. Listen on your radio, global player, or smart speaker.
Play hard.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
From New York City for our audience worldwide, you're listening to Bloomberg Surveillance. This is Bloomberg Radio. Your economic indicators will be brought to you by Commonwealth Financial Network for the 6th straight time. J.D. Power ranks Commonwealth number 1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms. Visit commonwealth.com to learn more. Some headlines crossing the Bloomberg. Tom Keane on the Prime Minister Boris Johnson.
I thought Francine had the Gulfstream, but I guess the Prime Minister is going to take it on short notice.
So he will be leaving a little bit earlier, but he won't be leaving right away. So let's be clear about that. He will be delivering a speech later this evening.
Fascinating.
And he will be meeting, I imagine, other leaders at the UN General Assembly as well. And I think that's really important. He's still taking the opportunity to be here in New York alongside foreign leaders, and his ability to deliver that speech will still be there.
Do you know the time of the speech? I don't want to catch you
off the top of my head, I don't have that time right now.
Evening.
Just this evening.
So it's evening New York time. which will be late evening London time, and I can assure you our United Kingdom team and Brexit, Edward Evans and our team will have full coverage of an interesting speech. I mean, John, does he rip up the script?
No idea, Tom. I think it's going to be really fascinating.
You wonder if President Trump, as Kevin Cirilli says, if Mr. Trump will ad hoc or separately give support to his favorite prime minister.
It's quite a stage to deliver that first speech, to be here in New York among foreign leaders, to look statesman-like, and to address ultimately a domestic audience.
Well, this is, and again, we've got to move things on here, but I would suggest that we've got a lot to talk about as well. With Berenberg Bank, did we have any economic data today? Did we get to it?
We get some housing data a little bit later this morning.
Later on, housing data. Case-Shiller 20-city index. We'll look for that later. And the conference, a consumer conference as well. We get fortunate in that our team, what we do, folks, I have very little to do with the segment-to-segment booking. But we just get lucky when we dovetail, as we do now with Caleb